How's it going, everybody? Welcome in to another episode of the Mavs Step Back Podcast. I'm your host, Dalton Trigg. I am joined by my co-host and good friend, Drew Johnson. You can find both of us on X at Dalton_Trigg and at Coach Drew 33. Guys, it's been almost 2 weeks. It's been a week and a half since the Mavs miraculously, some say, conspiracyingly, some others might say, won the NBA lottery with a 1.8% chance to do so. And now we're just all sitting around waiting for the NBA season to end and for the NBA draft to get here so the Mavs can draft Cooper Flagg, which is what many people expect to happen. There's been reports from Mark Stein and Tim McMahon and several others saying that that's the Mavs are planning to draft Cooper Flagg. They just had the NBA Combine last week. Cooper Flagg was as advertised. Like the people with Draft Express, Giovanni, I think is his name, or Giovanni, or however you say it, was saying that Cooper Flagg is probably the most surefire number one pick of the past decade. Like there's just no questions. Like you take him. In previous years, there's been more questions about who's going to go number. And I mean, even in the Luka draft, like we all knew Luka should have gone number one. That's what we were, preaching during that time. But, as you can tell, as you can see the results, that didn't happen. Ayton went first, Marvin Bagley went second. This is not one of those situations. Everybody seems to be on the same page. You do not take anybody at number one but Cooper Flagg.
No question.
There's been questions about, would the Mavs trade the pick for Giannis Antetokounmpo? I don't think that's the case. I mean, all that has to be factored in with these recent reports where the Mavs are like, we're not trading it. And Mark Cuban has told, I didn't write anything about this, but I shared it with you, after the lottery results. I was talking to Mark Cuban briefly, and I was just kind of joking. I was just like, we are so back. And, and he was like, I can't say what he said in response because it was explicit, but he, to the effect of, he was like, yeah, we are so back. And he said, and we are not trading it either. So there you go. There's your tiny Mavs step back exclusive. But man, we think we know what's going to happen. Obviously, things can change between now and the draft, but I think it's a safe bet to say Cooper Flagg is going to be a Dallas Maverick. We already have a handful of T-shirt designs, most of them courtesy of you, just putting in work on putting this stuff together that I can't wait to show the people. So we think we know what's going to happen there. We've talked about Cooper Flagg and how incredible he is as a prospect and what he could be. Now the question becomes, what else do the Mavs do this summer? Because if you take Cooper Flagg, you're kind of playing the two timelines kind of thing. Like you got Cooper Flagg, he's good enough to contribute from day one. Like he could help this team be a championship contender next season. That's how good he is. But he will have stuff to learn, and you'll have to develop him going into the next several years. And then on the other side of the roster, you have Anthony Davis, you have Kyrie Irving, who's coming off an ACL injury. He won't be back until 2026, the start of it, around New Year's or after. You have guys on the roster like PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford, who we talked about briefly before we jumped on here. Both of those guys are like 26, I believe, 26 years old, and they're both on expiring contracts going into this season. What do you do there? I mean, those are two key pieces to these teams the last few years. They were massive pieces for that NBA Finals run in 2024 when they lost to the Boston Celtics. Now, what do you do? I mean, because in most cases, and I've seen other people talk about this too, when teams try to play the two timelines kind of thing, it just
Never worked.
It doesn't really work out.
I've only seen it work once, and that was with the San Antonio Spurs.
Right, with David Robinson and Tim Duncan.
Right.
So, I mean, that's that's the outlier situation there. So you kind of have to wonder, what do the Mavs do here? Do they try to do it for like half a season? And then if you get to the trade deadline and things aren't working out the way you thought they were, then do you pull the plug? That's kind of where, let me put an asterisk on that. That's how I would want the Mavs to do this under normal circumstances. But given how deep this year's draft class is, I almost want them to make that decision now. Like, I want them to, if you're going to go all in on Cooper Flagg and his timeline and not, rush this other stuff, you need to look into doing something now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you could get multiple first-round picks in this particular draft. In the first round of this year's draft, you could get multiple first-round picks for PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford. So, with that being said, how high of a first-round pick do you think the Mavs could get for one or both of those players if it came down to it?
Let me tell you something. I don't really play 2K, all right? But since we got, the number one pick, there's this thing in 2K where you can go and you can start from this point in the season and, whatever. And so I get to the draft. You know what I did, Dalton?
What?
I'm going to piss some people off. I traded Anthony Davis to the San Antonio Spurs with the number 2 pick, along with some others.
That is a hot take right
Molten
there.
lava hot take.
Now, I don't know if San Antonio would do it.
It took some other stuff. I don't remember what all I sent over there, but it took some other things happening. And I'm certain
my mind is blown. That would be unreal.
And that I think it's even it would be even more ridiculous in real life because computers are computers. But I haven't seen what it looks like yet. And obviously this is 2K and these are, draft classes created by people who may or may not know basketball. But this one looked pretty good. Anyway, I think that Dylan Harper, if it was any other draft, would be a number 1 pick. He's just incredibly complete right now. He makes everyone around him better. The only thing that makes me hesitant about Harper, and I still see over this anyway, just because of all the positives you have with him, but Rutgers had a rough year, and they potentially had 2 of the top 3 picks in this NBA draft. You would think that you could at least get to, your conference finals with a number 2 and a number 3 in a draft this deep. Now you do have the issue of the quote unquote number 3 maybe not being what I previously thought he was. I still think his upside is tremendous, Ace Bailey rather, but his inability to create for himself is a huge red flag. In a league that is very ISO heavy, if you can't create for yourself, your effectiveness is going to be incredibly limited. You're going to be relegated to, an outlet shooter basically off of drives and kicks. And that's probably what he will be for the first few years of his career up until he can develop a handle and figure out how to create for himself.
Well, let me ask you this, because I haven't looked at San Antonio's cap sheet. I haven't looked at their contracts and all that, but I just have a feeling that if the Mavs did something like that, it would be harder to match salary for Anthony Davis
Mm-hmm.
on the Spurs end. Now I haven't looked at it, so I'm just guessing, based on what I know about who's on their roster right now and everything. But I feel like it'd be a little bit tougher to do that. Let me pitch you this.
Okay.
What if you went to Philadelphia,
Okay.
who, it's already been made known that they are shopping that number 3 pick. It's been well known that Paul George has been a massive, flub, I guess you want to say, since he came over from the Clippers and signed that big contract with them. If you're going to trade Anthony Davis and you're wanting to get another top pick to pair with Cooper Flagg, would you consider trading AD to Philly for Paul George and the number 3 pick?
How washed is Paul George?
I mean, when he's healthy, he's still pretty solid. But that's the thing. I don't know. I don't know what his health is. Which, I mean, I guess you could say the same for Anthony Davis. There's times where he's not on the floor either. So I mean, it just depends on what they're looking to do. Like, I mean, I could see the attraction for wanting to try and pair Anthony Davis with Joel Embiid. That's like one of the biggest what ifs in the NBA if it happened just due to health for both of those guys. But I'm just thinking, like, if the Paul George experience has already soured for them, and they're thinking, man, I don't want to, they don't want to continue to pay Paul George for the duration of his contract that was just signed last summer, and Anthony Davis only has like a couple years left on his, I believe. It might be an option. I don't know. I'm just looking at the top 5, and I'm thinking, like, what teams would make sense for AD?
I'll tell you this. Anthony Davis and Joel Embiid, they would make a great wheelchair basketball duo.
Yeah. And look, let me say this before some people get upset with it. In theory, especially if Kyrie Irving wasn't hurt, I feel like the Mavs roster as currently constructed could be incredibly good. Like, look at Anthony Davis before he ended up having that abdominal strain issue he dealt with for the second half of last season. Like, when he started last season with the Lakers, I don't think people remember the Lakers got off to a pretty good start. They were talking about Anthony Davis in MVP conversation in the first half of last season.
Yeah.
Like that's how good he was. So, I mean, he can be a very, very good player. He could be a top 10 player in the league when he's healthy. And the idea of having a front court that includes Cooper Flagg, Anthony Davis, and Derek Lively is an unreal thing to think about. And like I said, I'd be okay if the Mavs end up deciding that there's nothing that makes sense. There's no reason to move on from AD this quickly after you traded Luka to get him. So that's really the thing that we're missing here, and we're probably just, as they say, pissing in the wind, because Anthony Davis is Nico Harrison's guy. That's obvious by what was traded for him, and I think they're probably going to at least give it another season and wait till Kyrie gets back and see what they have here. But yeah, I mean, even if you don't trade Anthony Davis, let's take Anthony Davis completely out of this. What's the highest pick we think the Mavs could get in this draft if they don't want to give Daniel Gafford and PJ Washington extensions? If they don't want to give them extensions, they're on expiring contracts. Who are some teams that you look at where it's like, okay, maybe you could get something for them? Because one thing I'm looking at as we're scrolling through here, you've written about Igor Demon, and let's just say that, I mean, in this Tankathon mock draft, they have him going 18th to the Washington Wizards, which was that they get that pick from the Memphis Grizzlies. But let's just say he's a top 15 pick.
I think that's
Top 15. So like OKC owns Miami's pick at number 15. OKC should be interested in PJ Washington or Daniel Gafford, given how those two have played against them over the year, especially PJ Washington. They might trade for PJ Washington just so PJ Washington can't hurt them anymore.
I was going to say that might if you can't beat them, join them. So I don't know. You have to look at this from two perspectives. Can we get 2 separate first-round picks for each player and just draft lower? And, we could kill 2 birds with 1 stone. We could, say we got like an 18 and a 26 or something. Maybe we get, Igor as our project, who I think has tremendous upside. And then you draft Walter Clayton Jr. late in the first round and give him the reins while Kyrie Irving recovers. And listen, I have a really high opinion of Walter Clayton Jr.
I do too.
I think he's an immediate impact guy. I don't know what his ceiling is. I don't know what his floor is, honestly, but he basically willed Florida to a national title. Has one of the most underrated NCAA tournament runs ever.
He's got some. His game kind of reminds me of Jamal Murray a little bit. Just like, and it may just be like more of a physical appearance too, because they have like similar hairstyle and all that stuff too. But he plays a little bit like Jamal Murray, but he also has some of that Jalen Brunson, like strong will, like he's real poised and he's real polished when he needs to be. And that's, it's like Jalen Brunson. He was the clutch player of the year this year. So I see a lot of similarities there.
I think he's like a Jalen Brunson with, the Curry offensive player. Because, you see this guy, just pulling up off the dribble, shooting from the hip. He did some very Curry-esque Davidson stuff while he was at Florida in the NCAA tournament. And, people want to discount these older guys, specifically point guards. But what they don't realize is that older point guards, specifically those that have championship experience, are incredibly valuable. And they can come in and run your team 100%. I don't know what his ceiling is. I don't know what his floor is. But I know that he could help us out right now.
It's what the Mavs need. They need a guy who is capable of running the offense. They don't need an inexperienced guard, which I know any rookie guard is going to be inexperienced to some extent. But like you said, 22 years old. He's a senior that just led Florida to a national championship. He'd be an excellent candidate to come in and, fill in until Kyrie Irving gets back. He'd have – not only does he have a chance to prove himself from day one, he gets valuable experience and a handful of minutes that normally wouldn't be there if Kyrie wasn't hurt. So I think it's a given that the Mavs are going to add at least one guard this summer. Now, whether that's through trading for another draft pick or signing a guy, we don't know yet. But I think that trying to trade into those last 10 picks of the NBA draft this year, the first round, and getting Walter Clayton Jr., that'd be an excellent option for them.
Yes.
I'd be all for it, honestly. And to your point about, could the Mavs get 1 first-round pick each for Gafford and PJ? It's hard to say because I think they probably could if it was later first-round pick. You could probably get a pick in the 20s for each of them. Now, if they weren't on expiring contracts, maybe you could get something more for that, which leads me back to the other point I was going to make is like, do you give them an extension? And then if it doesn't work, as we talked about trying to play the two timelines thing, if it doesn't work, if you get halfway through the season, it's like, well, this isn't working the way we thought it was. Then you say, okay, well, we'll trade PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford, and then you have them on like 3 or 4 year contracts, and you can maximize the return. And some people will scoff at that and say, well, we know Nico doesn't like to maximize returns because of the Luka stuff. But again, you got to take into consideration. I mean, AD was just his guy. That's the absolute only way that you can come to terms with it. And it still doesn't make sense for most of us, but that's just it. That's what it is. Anthony Davis was Nico's guy. PJ Washington is Nico's guy. He went out and made sure to get him. So I don't know. It's hard to balance how I feel about this because I love this draft class so much and all the talent and potential for some of these guys, especially in the first round. But then on the other hand, I don't want to sell short on PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford because they've been such important pieces over the last 2 years. And they're so young still too. They're 26 years old. The other part of me is like, well, go ahead and sign them to extensions, and then you can trade them later if it doesn't work out. Because I do think as is, this team could be very good if they just add another guard. We don't know if Spencer Dinwiddie is going to be back or not. He was good at times, but we know how, Spence is inconsistent. You never know what you're going to get from him. He's very volatile. Brandon Williams, he's like the only guard on the roster right now because Dinwiddie is a free agent. And, shout out to Brandon Williams. I mean, he's shown that he is capable of being a real rotation guy. Even in his starts, he was awesome. So They have one guard. They just need to go out there and they need to get another one that can either start or back up Brandon Williams until Kyrie can get back. We've talked about our guy, Dennis Smith Jr. before, which, I'm sure there's some people that, get tired of me waving my Dennis Smith Jr. flag. But I mean, look, I don't understand how the guy didn't get an opportunity last season, and maybe he did, and he just didn't want to sign for a vet minimum contract or something, but he was one of the best defensive guards in the league the season before last when he was in Brooklyn. And it's not like defense is just his only thing. Now, obviously, he doesn't have the shooting, that Kyrie has, but he can still distribute the ball. He can handle the ball. He's tough. He's strong with the ball. He can dribble. There are some guys that just like you worry about them dribbling when they have the ball in their hands, turning the ball over. Dennis Smith Jr. is not that guy. I mean, he is improved his game. He's had some tough injury issues over the last couple years, or ever since the Mavs ended up trading him in that Kristaps Porzingis trade. But he's healthy again. He's had, pretty much a full season. He went and played for Real Madrid a little bit last season. It's like he got that experience, and now he's just ready to be a part of something. He doesn't care about the money. He doesn't care about, whether he starts or not. He's ready to join a team and be a hard-nosed, hard worker on both sides of the court. And given the price tag, DJ, I'm not sure that's not the way to go, at least to start this season, because then you're not trading anything. You're adding a guy probably at the vet minimum level, and, it's a guy who wants to win, and he's not worried about his stats or the money or anything like that. I'd be willing to give it a shot. And, I mean, obviously I'm biased when I say stuff like that, but just taking off my bias goggles and looking at it from just looking at the context. Why wouldn't you give the guy an opportunity? You've already tried Spencer Dinwiddie. I mean, we've seen how that can go. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's very, very bad.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you have this guy in DSJ who things didn't end well the first time he was in Dallas, but that was a different front office. He's shown on many occasions that in talking with Mavs step back, you know, that he would love to have a second run with Dallas. Why not give him an opportunity? He'd be cheap and he fills a void. And it, you know, the reward, the potential reward significantly outweighs the risk, which is almost nothing. So
I think that it really depends on, you know, what you're wanting to do with this roster with the addition of Flagg. You know, do we want to just run this? I think we could be very good if we just run this. And I think that Dennis would be a very, very good addition if we just choose to run with this older lineup around Flagg. But
and if it doesn't work, I mean, just, you know, do something different at the trade deadline.
I'll get into that. I'm going to give you a nightmare scenario, and I know everyone hates nightmare scenarios, but damn it, we've lived a nightmare scenario since freaking January, so we have to consider this. We have injuries, and why wouldn't we? We had injuries this past season. What's it going to look like next season? You know what a really good way to judge the future is? By what's happened in the past, especially whenever it comes to injuries. I mean, injury prevalence is a real thing, and it's a real concerning thing when people are evaluating players. Like, is Guy going to be, you know, available? What if we have a similar disaster scenario where our tradable assets get hurt, and not only are we not able to trade them, but we also don't have anything to play in their place? So I think if you're going, like, we either got to be all in or all out on this. Otherwise, we stand to lose significant value. And I hate to be that guy, but it's what's happened in the past, the immediate past.
I don't know. I'm so torn, DJ, because I mean we've talked so much about this over the last, even before the Luka trade. We were just talking about like, man, the Mavs own their pick this year. You know, even if we assumed they were going to be like in the 20 to 30 range before everything that happened. We assumed it was going to be a late first round pick, and we were still excited about that. So now that everything has happened the way it has, shout out to Mavs Cat for making another appearance. I love that cat.
Oops.
But we were excited about this before the Mavs even won the lottery. And now that they have, a part of me wants to be greedy and go back in and get another pick, maybe two more picks in this draft class. But then again, on the other side of it, it's like, well, you already traded Luka. You got Anthony Davis. You didn't get the full Anthony Davis experience because, let's be honest, I mean, he had played more games than Luka has over the past two seasons before the trade happened. And then they pretty much they rushed him. They rushed him back before the ab strain was taken care of, and he ended up re-injuring it, and he was out longer. And who knows what would have happened if he had, you know, stayed in and Kyrie wasn't being – the load on Kyrie's shoulders was so big, and he was playing like 40-plus minutes a night. I know Kyrie says that didn't contribute to his ACL injury, but I personally think it did. And I think the results speak for themselves because now the Mavs have like fired their athletic trainer, and you know they've shuffled the deck with their whole athletic training staff. So with that being said, and given how well Anthony Davis started off last season, I'm willing to, you know, to run this out at least for a year and see what they look like. Or, well, not a year, at least until the trade deadline, and see, you know, how things are looking. Because, man, if you just add another serviceable guard or 2 serviceable guards, and then you already have Brandon Williams on there, and then you look at all the other talent, like the wings and the centers on this roster from top to bottom. It's like, man, this is this could really be something. I don't know what's going to happen with Klay Thompson, but when everybody was healthy, he looked like he still had a lot left in the tank. But then after the injuries, he got overextended and it affected his play. And, he got some flack for that. But I think Klay is still serviceable when he's not asked to do too much. Max Christie is a guy who showed some real promise at times, both with the Lakers and especially those, the first month after he was traded to the Mavs. He looked awesome.
Yep.
And he's only 22. He's going to get better. And then, Najee Marshall's still there. He can handle the ball a little bit. He's a bull in a china shop.
I love Najee.
Najee's
I
awesome.
love the way Najee plays.
Not just the way he plays. He's a great dude, too. I love him.
Honestly, like just in my I know he's not off limits, but damn it, I don't want to trade him. I like watching him play.
No. I mean, look, he's making like $9 million a year. You got to keep him.
Yeah, keep the knife.
Yeah, as versatile as he is, you got to keep him. And he's one of those guys, you probably hate to play against, but you love having him on your team.
You got to have those guys, dude.
If somebody messes with him, if somebody messes with one of his teammates, like he's going to punch you in the face. Like that's just.
How old is he? How old is he?
He's 26 too, I think.
Okay, we can keep that.
No. Hold on. Let's see here. Bear with me. I have PJ pulled up on Basketball Reference because I was just making sure he is a expired contract. Let's see. Najee is 27. He just turned 27 in January.
He's a little bit outside of that window, but I could foresee him still being effective when Cooper Flagg is reaching his prime. But let me ask you this, or suggest this rather. As good as this draft is, I don't know if it's necessarily plausible to think that you can entirely, I don't want to say rebuild your team out of it, but, get 3 to 4 good players out of it, like serviceable players. I think you're going to miss. Whenever you commit to Cooper Flagg, you're committing to the future. I think we can all agree about that. What if we shop our guys around, not just for picks in this draft, but for picks in future drafts, and we specifically target teams that we think are going to suck in the future? Who would that be? Washington. Washington is going to be god-awful. Charlotte is about to do a bargain there.
I love how we said Charlotte at the exact same time.
The Utah Jazz, they're pretty bad.
Look, the Lakers might be bad if Luka doesn't sign an extension this summer.
That would be hilarious.
He could potentially leave in 2026, and LeBron's about to retire. So
that would be so good.
So I mean, you think about it. I mean, the Lakers need a center. I guarantee you that the Mavs could get that last first round pick and maybe like Rui Hachimura or something for Daniel Gafford.
Hachimura. Let me look.
I have no doubt that both teams would probably be interested in something like that. Now, some might say, "Oh, wait, well, yeah." Some people have mentioned Austin Reeves too, and those two salaries match up perfectly. Austin Reeves for Daniel Gafford, but Austin Reeves doesn't play defense, and I don't think you can get a first-round pick in that particular situation. Now, if it's something like Hachimura, I think you could probably get that first-round pick because they're so desperate for a center. And it's a center that Luka loves. So,
Oh, no, I think we could bleed them for Gafford. And I think you're absolutely right. I think that's where we go. I think we go to LA, maybe not for this upcoming draft, just because outside of like number 3. It's weak.
Oh yeah, they'll be okay this next season.
Yeah, I would love to get Dibanza, but I just but on down the line, we need to start playing the Oklahoma City Thunder game of just bleeding the whole world of picks. That's the way to go. I know we all hate OKC, but we cannot deny what Presti has done is genius.
And the thing is, we could take that approach, bleeding the other teams for picks, taking on unwanted salary for expiring contracts of better players like PJ Washington, Gafford. We could do all that and still not bottom out as hard as OKC did for a couple of years.
That's true.
Because the talent would be there. But yeah, I agree with you. That'd be a pretty savvy move to go ahead and stock up for the, those years where you've already traded your own picks and get other teams' picks that you think might not be good. That would be pretty solid. So there's a lot of different. We're going to have to dig into this deeper and have some like specific trades that we think we like based on whether it's a salary dump deal or Gafford to LA is one I've seen a lot of people talk about. Look, that would hurt just because I don't want to see the Mavs do business with the Lakers ever again based on what happened. But from a business standpoint, I want to gut them for everything they've got too.
This is where we stick them. Okay, this is where we make them pay for Luka.
Yeah.
Rob
Pelinka and his grooming of Nico must be paid for. He's got to pay for those sins. So, well, look, DJ, appreciate you joining me. I appreciate all of you coming in here listening today. We've rambled for a little over 35 minutes now, and it's good. I mean, I like to think this is where we start to really get creative it's not the off season yet, the entire NBA off season, but it's our off season. And so, we're starting to think of all the different scenarios and we're just kind of throwing stuff up against the wall and see what sticks. And we'll have some more detailed scenario. I'm going to write down some different trade ideas that I like, what matches salary, what picks I think Mavs could possibly get and all that stuff. And we'll have a more detailed display up on the screen for the next pod we do. And we'll talk about some of those trades, but guys, appreciate it. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Have a great weekend. Be sure to like, rate, and subscribe on all your favorite podcast platforms. Hit that subscribe button on our Substack channel. We have the QR code in the top left corner. If you're watching on YouTube, just scan that with your phone. It'll take you directly to it. We have a free subscription. We also have a paid subscription that is $5 a month. If you want to sign up for exclusive content that we'll be doing going into the off season and going into next season as well. And be on the lookout for those Cooper Flagg inspired t-shirts that we'll have coming to possibly our TeePublic store, most likely our TeePublic store, but we have some other things we're trying to get in motion too. So be on the lookout for all that. Guys, we appreciate it. Y'all have a great rest of your day. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys.